Welcome to PodBiz. This is not the intro we had planned for today's episode. Our guest, Todd Cochrane, founder and CEO of Blubrry, passed away this week. And this episode wasn't originally supposed to air now. We had plans, we prepared, we have a backlog of episodes, and it's times like this where you're super glad that people are generous with their time and expertise. We really hope you enjoy this episode with Todd. He had a wide impact within the podcasting industry and really spoke up for independent voices. He founded a podcast hosting company called Blubrry. You'll hear about that in today's episode. There's a beautiful obituary written by James Cridland of Pod News. We'll link that here to the show notes. And we really hope today's episode speaks to the power of independent voices and the legacy that Todd leaves behind. We're really grateful for the impact that he's had on the industry and to Todd for coming on PodBiz. Thank you for joining us. Let's get down to PodBiz. Today we're joined by Todd Cochrane, founder and CEO of Blubrry Podcasting. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Todd, where's the money in podcasting?
You know, that's the proverbial question I probably get asked 10 times a week. And I think it's a multi-faced answer. It really depends on where you're at in your podcast journey. A lot of times now, brand new podcasters, I want to monetize immediately. Yeah, that's possible, but maybe not 100% practical. But at the same time, there are things that at least we offer that they can turn on immediately as a hosting customer. They can turn on programmatic, but it doesn't mean they're really going to make anything. I think in those early stages of creating a podcast, it's probably better to not annoy your audience with ads and build your and find your voice and, get your battle rhythm down and get some episodes out and build that audience. But be honest with you, there's money all over the place. And probably for someone that's new, the best way is just to set up, and what I've done for years is just take PayPal donation. You have a PayPal account, there's a way to create a link, and you're really simply able to share that in your show notes or put it in the funding tag on your podcast host and say, hey, if you want to donate to the show, there's PayPal. And this is much simpler than setting up Patreon. If you want to set up Patreon, that's a bunch of work. And maybe that's a good viable option for someone that's a little bit later in the journey that has something they can offer, potentially perks and merch and that type of stuff. But really the goal on, chasing the money in the early days is just, hone your craft and build a big engaged audience. And, I think one thing that podcasters are always shy to do and that they should do is if you're trying to run something that's going to be supported, let them know right from the get-go that, your plan is to build this into something that will be listener supported and then maybe supplement with regular advertising as the show gets bigger. It's really a lot of facets there.
Yeah.
I think so many people are focused on the wrong thing in the very beginning. I know that in my early days of podcasting, money wasn't an issue until my spouse found out how much it was costing to
host.
Yeah, because there was no host then, and we were making it up as we went. So I had a 2-year deadline. So I think someone that's new that is going to be producing content on a weekly basis to get to a real great now, unless you have immediate success, unless you have a phenomenal growth out of the gate, which can happen if you have a great launch plan. You can have very good growth in the beginning, but still you get to the point where you have to have at least 10,000 listens per episode before some agencies will even talk to you.
Yeah. And now I think the number we're hearing is around 50. So it's definitely interesting. You just said a lot. Number one, and this has come up a lot here in PodBiz, and it's been a theme that we've seen woven into many episodes with many of our guests here, is that spirit of service and that value proposition, right? I'm offering value to my audience, and I'm creating, as a result, a community of people that want to support this work because they love it, because they're entertained by it, because they're excited about it, because they feel like they're part of something. So I think that being in that spirit of service is number one, especially on the monetization side. Especially, I talk to my clients on the audience development side in terms of the strategy and launch and all of that. And, it really comes down to who are you servicing, right? Who is your podcast for? How can you provide that value? And then in turn, once that community starts to be established, then you're off to the races, right? Then you can build in a lot of that monetization. Then you can add in a lot of different monetization streams, right? You can put that PayPal button and more people are going to donate. You can add in subscription integrations. You can monetize, with ad networks starting, like you said, 10,000, some networks are 50, to just get that ball rolling as well. It's very interesting. And at Blubrry, you guys work with podcasters of all sizes, but it's a lot of people that are like, hey, how do I start a podcast? This is my first time podcasting. And when they come to you guys, I think so many people enter the podcasting space with stars in their eyes. They want to be Joe Rogan. They want to be Alex Cooper. They want to be Call Your Daddy and Call Her Daddy. And at the same time, it can be one of those things where the practicality of the hard yards, because both of those creators really put the work in. Now they have teams. Yeah. But even starting out, I mean, there's that famous, I think, viral video of Dave Portnoy talking about how he saw a reel that Alex Cooper had cut, right? And so he was like, okay, she can cut a reel. She can market this. She knows, she has media awareness. I think that it's really important to remember that. And I also think that it's something where even then, you come in with the best intentions, you're still in the weeds, right? You're still doing the hard yards. There's still days where you're like, oh, editing or oh, I've got to talk to my editing team, even if you outsource that. So I think that that's a really important standpoint. And I think that community creation is a really big one as well, like you mentioned. You guys have a lot of tools at Blubrry built in. And I'm sure you see, on your back end, how a lot of creators are monetizing, right? Through the different tools that you guys have built in. But it's so interesting as an industry to see how things evolve, right? Because it started out with like, okay, I really like this podcast. I'm going to, maybe even just donate PayPal money to them. And then, we've gone in this big ad arc, which is brilliant, right? We love it. And now we're kind of, we're in that resurgence, right? Almost in a spiral where the next point in that spiral is people are paying to support your show, but it's within a subscription model, which has been brought up a lot within PodBiz and monetization, especially now, in the last couple of years with the Apple subscription launch and all of that.
I think too is if you're providing value, and there's a great website, it's called valueforvalue.info. If you're providing value, don't be afraid to ask for $1,000.
Yeah.
And sometimes people say, oh, I want to have a subscription or I want a tip or, that's probably the wrong terminology. I know of shows that are sustaining themselves, a 2-person team with some help with listener donations. And they vary and they've gamified gamified the donations. You donate a certain amount, you get a certain title, these types of things. And I think if you don't limit yourself to $29.95 a month or $9.95 a month.
Yeah.
There is this potential to, and again, you have to deliver value. If you don't deliver value, none of this works. So what is the value? It's okay, so I've got a show about XYZ, and you have to say, okay, I get done at the end of listening to that show, and you thought, wow, I learned something. This is going to save me money. This is going to help me on my business. Is whatever the goal of the show is. And I often find that podcasters don't have a goal for their show. I'll ask them,
That's very true.
What's your goal? And then I get this long dramatic pause, like they've thought about it for the first time. And I have to say, listen, if you don't know what your goal is, how do you know how you're going to get there? How can you plan to get there? Because maybe the goal isn't monetization. Maybe it's authority. Maybe it's to go on the speaking circuit. There's all kinds of different goals for shows. Maybe it's the lead gen for your business. It's, there's a variety of things.
Absolutely.
So if you know your goal and you deliver a value towards that goal, then you're setting yourself up real well to potentially have a model where the the listeners carry you all the way through. And maybe they won't. Maybe you'll have to then build that audience big enough to revert to a
more diversified model. Yeah, in terms of monetization, for sure. No, I totally get what you're saying. And I think it's also, a lot of podcasters are afraid of being vulnerable, right? They're afraid of saying like, okay, these are my costs, or this is what it took. This is how long it took. This is how much of my bandwidth and my time and my money and my sanity it took to make this show. And I think we've both seen examples of people saying like, hey, it actually cost me like $3,000 a year to make the show. And like everything you contribute goes toward that, but I need $3,000, right? And I think that also, that kind of vulnerability and transparency is also really important as well. Well, Todd, I want to pivot a little bit because you also mentioned, the pre-hosting days, the cowboy days of podcasting. So, you wrote the book, or if not one of the very first books on podcasting as well. So tell us a little bit about how you got into the podcasting industry, because you have a very interesting background.
I was in the U.S. Navy, and I had broke my back, and I was an air crew. Basically, I flew in the back of airplanes. And once I broke my back, I was grounded. And of course, when you can't do your job, they start looking at you very close. And I volunteered to basically do contract enforcement in Texas, building some airplanes. And I was out there, kind of out of sight, out of mind, giving value back to the Navy. But I was in a body cast, and I was hanging out in my hotel a lot because it was 100 degrees in the shade. And
Wow.
a body cast at 100 degrees in the shade is, doesn't make for a fun time
No, no.
in more ways than one.
Hard pass on that if you can avoid it. Yeah.
So I'm spending a lot of time in the hotel room, and I'm on my computer, and I hear about this thing called podcasting, and I thought it was cool, and it sounded fun, and I like to talk. And I was a failed blogger. I maybe had 300 people a month maybe come to my website if I was lucky. And so I started this tech show, and, I did everything wrong in the beginning. I played copyright music and, just, some stuff that today we tell people don't do this. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think I introduced the show with AC/DC, Back in Black or something like that. What happened is that show just went nuclear. And it was early days. So I was, I had the advantage there. I was probably one of the first 45 or 50. We don't know what the number, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
And there was no hosting accounts. There was no Blubrry. There was no Libsyn. There was no Buzzsprout. None of that existed. And, it was geeky world because we were hand coding the feeds. I mean, it was pretty hands-on. And I knew I was onto something when I woke up the third or fourth day after putting out the first episode, and I was out of bandwidth on my shared hosting account. And I thought, can't be right. And the file sizes the media were really, really small. I think we were encoding at 16 or 32K. It was really small. And I ran out of 500 gigs of bandwidth on that shared hosting account. And the only option I had to keep the show as online was to buy another hosting account. So in the end, before we got a couple of months into the show, having been online, I had 8 shared hosting accounts to the tune of some serious money.
Yeah. Back then, data was really expensive.
Yeah. And I went home to Hawaii, and I'm telling my wife about this thing I'm doing called podcasting, and she's looking at me like I'm crazy. And of course, then, well, how much does it cost? And you're kind of like, by the way, I put $4,000 on the credit card, so. And that gets a reaction, best to ask, beg forgiveness and ask permission, right? She kind of did the little wave of the finger, and she says, you got 2 years to figure this out. Now, luckily, in November of 2004, Wiley Publishing reached out and said, hey, we'd like to write the first book on podcasting. And I'm not an English major. I thank God for Grammarly and all the other tools we have today. But it really started from that. It was very exciting times, obviously, because it was new. And we just celebrated 20 years of iTunes having podcasting. Well, Apple having podcasting in iTunes, which people may not even know what that is now because iTunes is no longer a thing. But it is it's been an amazing ride. And so ultimately what I did was wrote a book, started a network, kept my head to the ground, trying to figure out what's going on. And in June of 2005, GoDaddy contacted me, say, we want to sponsor your show. And I said, okay. And they said, how much? And I didn't know. And I threw a number out. It was 10 times too low. And after a month, they said, we want to renew for a year. And I said, I had enough common sense to say, how did we do? And it turns out I had like 370 new GoDaddy customers in that first 30-day content. And I said, I need to go back and do some math. And I went back and did the math, and we got on the phone a day or two later. And her name's Chris Redlinger, love her to death. She's now retired from GoDaddy. But Chris said, so how much you need, Todd? And I gave her a number, and she said yes immediately. So I knew that I had undershot, and I paused. And I had that dramatic pause like I was talking a few minutes ago about, what's your goal? And I said, how about also a performance bonus? I just pulled it out of the air. And she laughed, and she said, you underbid it, didn't you? I said, Chris, did I? What should I have been asking? And she goes, well, that's you to figure out. So we basically set a base and then a bonus commission. They're still my sponsor for my show today.
Amazing.
Yeah. So in July, before that phone call got over, she said, Todd, do you know anyone that would like to also be a GoDaddy rep, maybe a sponsor? Could we sponsor their show? I say, yeah, I know 13 other shows, tech shows. I'm sure they'd be interested. But I got off the phone. I got to thinking, and I'm busy. I'm still in the Navy. And I'm like, how am I going to juggle this? And I said, maybe this is a business opportunity. So in my podcast, I said, I need a lawyer. I need a MBA. I need a graphics guy, and I need a programmer. We're having a call in 10 days, and we got to have that call. And there was about 10 or 15 people on the call. And I said, if you don't have, I think I said $2,000 to invest in a business today, please hang up. And boy, they dropped like flies. Click, 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 click. And I was left with a graphics guy, an MBA, and a lawyer from my audience.
Perfect.
Yeah. And my graphics guy says, I know a programmer. So we'll get him on the phone. And we formed the company. We formed what is Raw Voice, which is the parent company of Blubrry. We formed that over the telephone and been off to the races ever since. Yeah.
That is a wild story. I mean, I think it's so interesting to hear everybody's origin story within podcasting, because we're still such a young medium that everybody's journey into professional podcasting is different, right? There's people who came from radio, there's people who came from tech, there's people who were independent creators, and it's very interesting. And I think also back in the day, right? Like we're talking over 20 years ago, just over 20 years ago, podcasting was revolutionary. I mean, I think I had first heard of a podcast, and to be honest, after that. So
8 or 9 or something like that. For a number of years, people, I'm doing a podcast, and you get that are you from Mars type of.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. The Mars thing. Well, Todd, what would you say is one key move or metric or even mindset that's made the biggest impact on your podcasting career?
Rinse, wash, repeat. You got to do the grind. You got to keep. I struggle just like any other creator, any other podcaster, to pull up the microphone 2 times a week.
Oh, I know. I have that feeling all the time. I mean, I haven't made as many episodes as you, but it's definitely something where once you're doing it, right? And once you've hit record and you're having that conversation, you're having that interaction, you're plugged in, you're excited, you're connecting with someone. But sometimes just pulling out the camera, pulling out the mic, and being excited to kind of get your setup in order and all that pre-production and then the editing, it can definitely be a bit of a slog. I was also going to ask, what would you say is that one key move that makes the biggest impact on the podcasters that you work with? And I'm guessing it's probably the same. It's just showing up and doing the hard yards.
One thing I will add for me specifically is I had little kids at home. So everyone's situation is different. Wherever you're at, you may have a partner, you may have you might be married, you might be single. It all depends on your stage in life and the time commitment. So for me, I had X amount of time to commit that I negotiated with my partner, and that didn't include time for editing. So I never edited and never have. And the reason for that was because I just didn't have that time to do it. And there was no editors at the time. So I just made sure I was a better podcaster. I made sure that I prepped and had a good recording and strive to improve each episode. So what the biggest challenge for most podcasters is by far is number one, hitting record and making it to episode 20. If they can
Yep.
make it to 20, they're going to make it. Most quit before 75% of new podcasters quit before they hit episode 20, which is
Yeah. That is a wild statistic. Yeah.
50% quit before they hit 7. Now, an internal statistic at Blubrry, 50% of podcasters that sign up never record a single episode. So we're already, by bringing
Wow.
500 new customers, 250 of them never start.
It's
Yeah,
wild.
it is wild. So I think what happens is there is this, I'm going to do a podcast.
Yeah.
And then when it comes down to brass tacks, oh, I don't like my voice. I don't have the right
You know
equipment.
what? I 100% agree. I think it's actually the same phenomenon as buying a bunch of stationery at the beginning of the school year. Like I'm going to be so productive and I'm going to be so organized with my new planner. Like how many people buy planners at the beginning of the year and get, a month into them, right? How many people buy gym memberships January 1st, right? I think it's that promise of product.
So what we're trying to do is we're building checklists now to get people into the system.
I
And
love that.
give them a checklist, get them to the point where, okay, now you're ready. And oh, by the way, we've got this Adobe podcast relationship. You get a free 60 days with Adobe Podcast. Go over there, record your first show,
Yeah.
bring it back in. And you were trying to streamline to get people to the start. Now, there's really two types.
Absolutely.
Maybe 3 types of podcasters. Our main businesses are churches, businesses, news, and another category. But anyway, those are some of the top categories. Those are podcasters that have intent. They want to podcast. They need to. There's a difference between need to and want to. The need to folks get up and get running right away. The want to are the ones that don't. And it's not easy. I think people who start YouTube channels find it's not easy in the beginning. You just have to hone that content. So we try to do the best thing we can do, and we have a great support team that helps those creators. But yeah, it's a shocking statistic every month, and it always, be honest with you, it drives me insane because I see, okay, here's the number that have come in, here's the number that didn't make it to the first billing, and that's really the difference between growth and great growth in a company is getting those 50% that decided for whatever reason not to continue. And, we're doing everything we can to say, hey, we can help you.
Yeah. I think it's about, those support systems. I think it's about expectations. And I think we both know, on the software side, those integrations are going to make a world of difference, right? Having to download and re-upload something program to program. I mean, I have a short attention span these days. I think everybody does. And so, you want to just reduce, it's like in marketing, right? You want to reduce the amount of clicks it takes for somebody to get to the cart of your website, right? It's the same thing. You want to reduce that fatigue of using different platforms and products. And so the more integrations you have and the more those systems are built up, it's so supportive for podcasters and for creators. Absolutely.
It's one of the reasons why we built our AI system. I knew how much time it was taking me with post-production, and my goal was to double the quality output and reduce the amount of time by about 40%. And it took us about 6 months to figure that out. And once we got it, now the output is much better than what I would personally write. Now, podcasters are notoriously bad in doing show notes.
Yeah. We're audio folks. Come on.
But, it's you record for your audience, you write for Google, and you write for this AI now. So I think.
I just hold on for a second, though. I want to repeat that. You record for your audience, you write for Google. I think it's spot on. Yeah.
It's exactly it. Because, be honest with you, most people are not going to come to the website to read the show notes. But Google will read the show notes, and Google will make recommendations when people are searching for your topic. So there's just, there's a lot. And here's the thing about podcasting. I wish everyone had a 5-person team because there is a lot to do.
There's a lot of jobs in one podcast.
Yeah. You're the host, you're the talent, you're marketing, your production, and the majority of shows, single or a co-host. And what I find with those that are a co-host, sometimes there's one person says, okay, I'll take care of show prep. And the other person, okay, I'll take care of show production. But the person that always does show production always has more load than the person that's particularly doing show prep. But don't be scared. And matter of fact, this today, and I've been saying this for a year, is the best time ever to become a podcaster. And here's the reason why. Audio podcaster. If you start with audio, move into video as you see fit, the number of active shows is under 400,000 right now that have produced a new episode in the last 60 days. Compared to all the other mediums and 30-some categories of podcasting, and you divide that up, you really have a very small number of shows organically that you compete against as compared to YouTube, and there's millions. In podcasting, you have a much higher chance of discovery and success rate.
A lot of people enter the space and they're like, oh, it's too late, or I should have made a podcast, in 2020 or 2018 or 2014. And, maybe, but also the best time to start a podcast is today. Absolutely. Todd, I want to ask you next, what's something that people don't know about what you do?
Well, I think the main thing is maybe most people don't know that I'm still an active podcaster. There's not too many founders of a podcasting company that actually podcasts. I can probably name, and some co-founders do, and some employees do. But
Yep.
I record. Matter of fact, this morning we're going to record our podcast we do for the company. I do the new media show.
Yep.
So I'm
Yep.
recording 4 or 5 times a week. So I'm really feeling the same challenges of anyone. Even I've been doing this for 20 years. My audience on my Genesis show has grown and fallen and grown and fallen. And,
Yeah.
you see a downward trend for 2 or 3 months. You're like, what's going on? Or are they leaving? And then someone comes back after being gone for 3 years. So it's really it's the same thing. It's the same emotions that every podcaster feels. So I think that's what makes probably my perspective a little different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I think what also may really be an asset in terms of the features that you guys create and roll out at Blubrry is that you are still in the trenches as a podcasting podcaster, right? You're actively podcasting regularly, and you build a lot of features. It seems, from where I'm sitting, it seems like you build a lot of features because of that experience and that continual podcasting effort that you make. One of them coming out is guestmatch.pro, which is really exciting, where, which I think is somewhat separate to Blubrry, but it's really that guesting side as well.
Yeah, it's a brand new product. We thought there's some players in space. We fully recognize that, but we also understand that a lot of podcasters are paying for a lot of services. And the question is an added value. If you're hosting with Blubrry Podcasting, I'm giving you access to guestmatch.pro for free. You're going to be able to create a creator account. And this site is going to be not just for podcasters, YouTubers, everybody, but you'll be able to create a creator account for free and a guest account for free. Obviously, we want agencies and guests to sign up to be part of the service as well when we launch it. But it's just one of those things to say, okay, I've got you AI, I've got you a guest matching service, I've got you free Adobe podcast for 60 days.
You have a suite of tools, right? It's all in one place. I think that that's a really important distinction. I mean, I think you also, a guest match is really about, finding guests for your show, being a guest on another show. It's that guesting component, which, as we all know, grows a show and exposes your audience to new guests and all of that. So, I definitely understand the value. I think, guesting and cross promo, feed drops, it's all such a big part of growth strategy within podcasting. And I also feel like you and I have both, you probably a lot more than me, have seen what that looks like every 18 months or so. There's like a crop of new podcast service businesses, right? I think right now it's video clips. There are many, many video clip companies. There are many, many video clip creators. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, companies that only do that thing. Right.
That's their thing. There's
it, right. They crop up, and you guys have it built in. I mean, Headliner just launched it. It's something where we're seeing it with established companies within the podcast hosting marketing space, all of that. But then there's companies that are just clip companies, right? So And then, you see that wave, and then you see the established companies start to create and adopt those features. Then you see another wave. I think maybe 3 years ago, it was really AI captions, right? You'd upload the audio, and then it would create a transcript, and then it would create captions, and it would create quotes, and it would create show notes and all of that, right? And now, of course, on the hosting side, that's built in with AI and all of that. So it's really fun to kind of see those waves. And I think the guesting component of it, especially that, almost open marketplace that you're creating in terms of, podcast guesting, but also in terms of overall content creator guesting is almost a different offering. And that'll be really fun to see how that's folded in, and the way that creators, both within Blubrry's podcast hosting and outside of it, utilize that. I think it'll be really fun. But I always think it's so interesting because it really does come in waves, right? I mean, I don't know if you've seen that, but like I always feel like, you're at a conference and you see everybody, you have all your friends, you go to, all the booths of the companies that are established, and you say hi, and you have all your coffee meetings. And then you see this like crop of new companies. And it's very interesting to see, whether those companies are going to be bought out, whether they're going to become a staple, and how, maybe it's a feature that they did really good at the beginning, and that now a lot of other established companies that have services are going to build it in. It's such an interesting thing.
And oftentimes they have ventures, so they're like in a 3-year run. They have, and if they don't make it,
they have
gone.
runway. Yeah. Like if they lose runway, that plane's not leaving the airport.
Right. That's exactly right. And it is a situation too where financial times, the times we're in, people are watching their euros and dollars, and we're conscious of that. But it is kind of ironic too. We're probably at a point in podcasting where you'll see podcast hosting companies start raising hosting prices. We're at the same price we were 18 years ago. So that should shock people. Say, you mean you haven't raised hosting costs in 18 years? No. But at some point that has to give, largely just because everything else has just went crazy thing. It's the cost of doing business just continues to rise. And the data has not. The data is not even the most expensive cost now. The data is, it's just a number.
I guess data is continually getting cheaper. That's true. But no, you're right. I mean, and also, healthcare staff, you guys are growing. As an emerging industry, it's also so interesting to see podcasts go from very niche to almost mainstream media. It's very exciting. It's very, very exciting.
At the same time, I still feel like I'm working in a startup. It's got that, it's a 20-year startup is kind of loud.
Yeah. Well, you didn't, you guys are one of the few companies that didn't take a buyout, right? And so.
Well, we didn't take money in the beginning, and we had a couple of offers, a couple of M&A events that we walked away from. True, and those companies that actually came to buy us are gone, which is interesting. So we made the right choice in not merging or doing the deal.
Absolutely. It's so interesting. I've talked to a couple of people, and we had Mark Asquith on, and he talked about, Captivate.fm being acquired by Global, and really how it has to be the right fit. Like we're talking about the waves of feature, individual feature companies within podcasting. There's definitely waves of acquisitions, right? The ones that stand the test of time, it really is about that right fit. It's a cultural fit, a product fit, it's a consumer fit. It's really, really important. I mean, I think as a founder on some level, it's your baby, and everybody on the outside is like, take the money, go sit on a beach. What do you mean someone's offering you millions of dollars to retire? But
I think to sell. Don't get me wrong. If the right offer and the right fit comes, we will do the deal.
Okay, good to know. For everybody watching, Todd's ready to sell if it's the right fit, okay?
It's the right fit. and you got the correct number of zeros at the end. That's the key.
Absolutely. No, but it is very interesting also because when you grow and build a company from the ground up, it's not just you, right? It's everybody that you have gotten to work with you and for you, and their trust and their careers, and any equity that they may have, and what they'll do afterward, and what positions or roles they'll have at the new company. And there is that big, it's not just like, oh, they wrote us a check, they own the company. There can be a lot of shifts, and it's really important to make sure, number one, that your consumers are taken care of, but also the people that have dedicated their careers and their working lives to your company and your product.
Team members have been with us 10 plus years, for sure.
Yeah,
And that's a
Absolutely.
daily
Absolutely.
thing, is making sure, okay, are we, again,
Yeah.
we don't have a problem making payroll, but it's one of those situations where, okay, in the end, it's about the team.
Of course. Absolutely. Well, Todd, if you had to start over today, what would you do differently to grow faster or smarter?
Knowing what I know now, we started out more as an agency. We weren't a hosting company in the beginning. I probably would have doubled down and brought in more people that would have helped us in that regard. And we
Mm.
probably, because we were technically the first agency, which is kind of wild if you think about it, because we were repping shows in the very, very early days. We didn't know we were an agency. We didn't know what to call it.
Right.
Because, we're making it up as we went, literally. We just
Yeah.
did not know. So I probably, if I know now, if I'd have known, anyway, long story, I'd probably done both. But I would have been able to capitalize on, the money is in the ad repping.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, we've seen, at the very top, individual creators get hundreds of millions of dollars, right?
So as in a little
Yeah.
hosting company, with a reoccurring subscription base, you're not talking hundreds of millions of dollars. Even the biggest company between Buzzsprout and Libsyn, and of course they have many components to their business now. I think their maximum maybe doing $20 million a year.
Yeah. It's really ads. Ads are really the future. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a huge
Yeah.
component of it. And that's why so many ad companies bought podcast hosting solutions too.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
that was where a lot of
It's definitely
acquisitions.
interesting to see which companies are ad first bought hosting or hosting first bought ads or built ads.
Or they
definitely
switched. They were hosting first and now are ad first. So that's happened
Yeah.
in the space too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Todd, last question here on PodBiz. What are you most excited about looking forward to within the podcasting industry?
I think what we're at a crossroads right now. And I think, it's just been this focus on video. And and what I'm excited about is, well, I shouldn't say excited. What I want to make sure that people understand is that you don't have to do video. This is the key. People have a lot more time to listen than they do watch. We're living busy lives. People take their 3, 4, 5, 6 podcasts with them and go everywhere. Whereas they may have 100 YouTube channels they're watching, and you get fed some 3, 4, 5 YouTube channels. There's more time to listen than there is to watch. So if you are a creator and you're thinking about joining and starting a podcast, start audio first. You can add video anytime, at any time, but get your land legs, find your voice. And I think that's a message. The space is going to remain strong. These shiny lure events have a tendency to burn themselves out. And I think we're probably in the midst of the down swoop right now of everyone thinking I need to do video. The younger generation is going to do video no matter what. That's fine. But I think there's a good combination for individuals that want to start podcasting. Is audio is very inexpensive to start.
Yeah, audio is very inexpensive. And audio's a lot less expensive to get very good. I mean, I think there is a video strategy, I believe, and I always talk to my clients about this. There is a video strategy for each podcast, but it's going to be different for each podcast, right? Here on PodBiz, we're video, but also we have a very clip-forward promotional strategy.
I've done video before it was cool to do video.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, it's interesting because I think, there is so much pressure amongst creators to do video, but I believe there is always a video that's achievable and the right solution for each podcast. And sometimes that is no video. If you're just starting out, if you don't have the bandwidth, I think it's important to do what you do well and to build from that place. Absolutely.
The bandwidth is the key. It's really a big piece of it, and having the time. And again, it depends on what you're doing. Is it something your business has to do, or is it something you want to do? And I think now any business, doesn't matter. And here's really the kicker. AI is going to change everything for search. So if you're not a business and you don't have a diversified social profile, social being podcast, Instagram, all of the above, LinkedIn, if you're not, how are you going to get found if the AI doesn't recommend you? How are you going to be discovered? The plumber down the street might be able to be found. That business
Yeah.
might be safe. But if you're a business and you are kind of global or you're trying to
Yeah.
expand, how are you going to get found as search changes? And it is already changing. So I think podcasting
Absolutely.
is a good part of the being wide, having yourself out there in multiple places.
Absolutely. Record for your audience, write for Google and AI. Well, Todd Cochran, founder and CEO of Blubrry Podcasting, thank you so much for joining us here on PodBiz.
Yeah, thanks for having me.